Good evening, everyone. Council meeting for March 7th, 2016. We'll start with the roll call and determination of quorum.
Laurenti, Wright, Weifenbach, Doyle, Estes, Lewis, Drew, Roberts, Nordstrom, Scott. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. And now we'll have a invocation by Randy Kriesman from Black Hills Habitat. Randy, are you here? No? Okay, well, let's stand and have a moment of silence, and following that, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Now we'll go on to the adoption of the agenda. Anyone have any changes to the agenda? If not, can we have a motion? Have a motion by Wright, second by Roberts. All in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. Motion carries. Now we'll go general public comment. We have several speaker request forms, but not under general public comment. We'll get to all those in just a few minutes. So we'll go on to non-public hearing items, items 1 through 61, and we'll open public comment on items 1 through 50. So when I call you up on these, just keep in mind you have 3 minutes. Introduce yourself when you get to the podium. And the first one on item number 30 is Deborah Jensen.
Good evening, Mayor Allender and members of the Rapid City Common Council. My name is Deborah Jensen. My husband and I own Black Hills Bagels on Mount Rushmore Road. I'm also president of the Mount Rushmore Road Group. The Mount Rushmore Road Group was formed in 2005 with a small group of business people concerned about the continued viability, safety, and aesthetics of Mount Rushmore Road. Now there are well over 100 members. The Mount Rushmore Road is, of course, a very vital corridor for residents, for commerce, for medical facilities, and, of course, visitors. It is one of the first images of Rapid City, and it is the gateway to Mount Rushmore and the Black Hills. Thanks to forward-looking citizens, city planners, and leaders such as you who have encouraged and involved yourselves with this project, I want to say it's looking good. Today, contractor Reedy Construction was to begin landscaping on the south end of Project 1, which actually ends this spring. Project 2 from Kansas City Street to St. James Street begins in about a month. Black Hills Energy has nearly all of their lines down, and by the end of this summer, 90 power poles on Mount Rushmore Road will all be gone. The beautiful Rain or Eco Gardens will tie in beautifully with Kansas City Street, 6th Street, and other streets. They are a great aesthetic asset as well as being very environmentally friendly. Project 2 will go until 2017. Then Project 3, which is the middle section of Mount Rushmore Road, will begin in 2017, and it will be completed in 2018. And that's right, 13 years from concept to completion. But it has been a great partnership between the state, you, the city, the businesses, and of course the citizens of Rapid City. And I want to thank you on behalf of the Mount Rushmore Road Group.
Thank you, Deborah. If you want to stay up there, you get a bonus round on item number 46. And we set up the timer. Yeah, we set up the timer kind of to short you on that by accident. So
You did it.
Seconds more.
You did.
Change scripts. Well, again, good evening, Mayor and members of the Rapid City Common Council. Again, for the record, my name is Deborah Jensen. I am a businesswoman in Rapid City, and I'm also a member of Scenic Rapid City. First, let me say thank you to 3 of Rapid City's finest attorneys, Vern Goodsell and David Barari, who wrote the citizens' initiatives and successfully defended them in federal court, and City Attorney Joel Landine, who defended Rapid City citizens in state and federal court and successfully convinced the governor to side with Rapid City citizens. It's truly a David and Goliath story. These 3 men against a multinational corporation of an army of lawyers who believe in a scorched earth policy sue you into submission. Lamar has spent over $1 million losing more battles in our courts on these 2 issues than they've won. Rapid City has spent $75,000 winning more battles than we've lost defending the citizens' wishes. And now Lamar has found an obscure law that says that they can sue in state court for contrived damages over 6 billboards that have nothing to do with these initiatives. And Lamar says if they win, Rapid City will have to pay them hundreds of thousands of dollars. But Lamar has offered an olive branch. Pay them $100,000 now, throw in the 2 citizen initiatives, and Lamar will drop all the lawsuits against the city. Lamar wants everything rescinded, although they did agree to an increase of spacing by 500 feet, but not the 1,000 feet that the citizens had wanted. Lamar says they have no current plans to build, to replace, or even convert any billboards. But they want this deal done now because, after all, who knows about the future? If the deal is not done now, Lamar threatens to knock the citizens to our knees with lawsuits. An interesting sidebar of this suit, though, is that it has nothing to do with the initiatives. It boils down to eminent domain or property rights. But billboards are not real property. If they were, they would pay property taxes. Billboards pay no property or sales taxes. Is an unintended consequence of this deal that the city could be agreeing with Lamar that billboards are real property? Now, this settlement before you may, in fact, be the best in order to kick this can down the road. But if we have made any mistake, and if we have agreed too quickly, we may be in a far worse position, and we may have sacrificed the rights of the people. Let some light shine on this. Give the citizens a little time to digest and respond. Our lawyers are giving you options, and they're giving worst-case scenarios because that's their job too. But I can tell you, and you know this too, they have the ability to successfully uphold the citizens' rights. They've done it before, they show that they can do it, and they can do it again. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Mike Kwasny. Also on item 46.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, my name is Mike Kwasny, a part of the community who voted to control a problem we have. I would be remiss to not thank the attorneys and you, our representatives, for going to battle against Lamar on this important item we have up. I'm trying to wrap my head around what's going on with the settlement you have before you. It started pretty simple. Lamar wants to put an oversized digital billboard across from Wilson Park many years ago. Some business people on Mount Rushmore Road sit down with them, discuss what they would really like them to reconsider it, as it is across from a park, across from a school, and oversized billboard might not be the best interest of this position, or where this is. The business people leave the meeting feeling good. This probably will not happen. The very next day, we find out a variance was placed to put this very billboard up. Some of these business people became involved in trying to set what direction our community is going to many meetings, being pretty involved. The billboard industry puts up signs without permission, allowed to keep them up under the premise that they are good for the public. Several people find themselves having to continually monitoring what is going on with the billboard industry in our community, confused by what is being allowed. Decide the only way to not have to spend much time as watchdogs, they must change the law. Over 66% of the voting public agreed there needs to be some control. And yes, we all have the right to make sure the decisions that are illegal go to court, make sure that they're legal. After much time and litigation, some decisions come down, some opinions. These decisions go both ways, based on some existing state laws that may need to be visited, but then that's another story. Now we are giving this industry money. It seems that if at the beginning of this string of events, they had done what they said, all of this would not have taken place. We need to get a handle on what it is that we want going from here. The voting public has asked us to take care. All the things we are doing downtown, on the road to Mount Rushmore, the millions of dollars that we're spending, our great park system, we're spending a lot of money to make a better view of our community. Is it helped with more billboards? And now let's have them all flashing. Instead of asking for money from us, maybe this industry could join in our master plan and become a part of our plan. So I would throw out that as a challenge. They say they can't fit any more billboards, even if we change the distance. So don't change the distance. In fact, make the distance higher. Help the master plan. I, for one, would love it if they joined us. If it was all of us working together for the good of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Lisa Modrick.
I am Lisa Modrick, and I am president of Scenic Rapid City. And I appreciate Mayor Allender, City Council, and the legals for working through this for the 5 years that have passed by so very fast, but have controlled where we're at while we get through this process. We request that you stand behind the citizens who did vote that 66% for local control of billboard regulations. Don't settle for billboard proliferation in Rapid City, as we already have too many billboards. The decision by the courts after 5 years of litigation was a major victory, and it was in support of the citizens' initiatives for reasonable regulations. The citizens requested that the City Council, multiple times, place a moratorium during that 2010-2011 timeframe. There was a mayor's ad hoc committee that was reviewing the entire sign code, and off of that branched a citizens ballot initiative. It was the City Council's decision at that time not to place a moratorium while all of this was before our city government for a full year, and that they were guaranteed that nothing was going to take place while we were going through the ad hoc process. However, Lamar rushed a permit and ran 6 billboards, and after filing, suddenly now we have a moratorium request, and that was to get us through the election. It is important to this community that its Rapid City leaders continue to provide solutions that reduce the proliferation of these unwanted billboards. Without good regulations, zoning, and overlays as a plan for reduction, the city of Rapid City will continue to look like the billboard capital of America. This is not what the citizens of Rapid City want, and nor do our visitors. Consider what the comprehensive plan for Rapid City shows in our future growth and our development. Protect new development with billboard-free zones. It is also important to the safety and the beauty of this community that depends on those tourist dollars. So perhaps another moratorium needs to be in place until planning and preservation and the continued review of off-premise signs and codes are aligned with what Rapid City's future is. Please do the right thing to keep Rapid City scenic, and we appreciate you for that.
Thank you. And now the final speaker on item 46, Steve Doscher.
This one on? Which one? This one? My name's Steve Dozier, 3302 Snowmass Court. I'm currently on your beautification committee. I serve as chairman, but I don't have the authority to speak for the group. I'm just speaking for myself. I've served on that committee for, I think, about 27 years. I can tell you that during that time frame, we've never had a member who was pro-proliferation of billboards. We've had a lot of members who are, I guess what I'd say, taking billboards down, reducing the number, reducing or increasing the distance, and all the things that I would guess that Lamar is against. I was one of those that obviously voted in the majority on the the billboard issue back in 2011. I think the citizens had a great vision of what they want Rapid City to look like in the future, and Lamar's has an entirely different vision of what they want it to look like. I would hope that you would side with the citizens of Rapid City the way they voted back in 2011, because I think that vision is still the vision for Rapid City. I'd hope that you would give that strong consideration. Thank you.
Okay, and that will close our public comment period on items 1 through 50. So next we're on to consent items 1 through 50. Would anyone like to remove any of these items? We have a motion. We'll go to Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 46, please.
Okay, Darla Drew.
Items 32 and 33.
Okay, seeing no further lights, can we have a motion to approve the consent items with the exception of 46, 32, and 33? So moved. Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Motion carries. Okay, we'll go on to item number 32.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I'll move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve.
Yes, on the people that you've got here to confirm reappointments for the Mayor's Committee for People with Disabilities. These are really dedicated folks that come to these meetings every month. And with so many disabilities issues in front of the city, I would hope that they would be more involved in some of the things that are upcoming, like the Civic Center planning. Of course, I'm in favor of all these wonderful people. I've worked with them as the liaison to the Committee for People with Disabilities, and I full-heartedly support them being on the committee again. But I just want everybody to be aware that they're there, and we should be accessing their knowledge on issues involving people with disabilities. We're not going to have fewer number as time goes by, so I'd like to see them a little bit more involved in especially the Civic Center planning. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And just for the record, item number 32 is to confirm reappointments of Dale Landis, Jim Shamber, Barb Storbeck, Sonia Lee Orr, Tom Sitzler, Catherine Gresseth to the Mayor's Committee for People with Disabilities. We have a motion and a second for approval. All in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. And opposed say no. Motion carries. On to item number 33. And Darla, would you read that in, please?
Oh, yes. I make a motion to approve the resolution number 2016-024, authorizing the placement of hats, scarves, and other articles of winter clothing on presidential statues in downtown Rapid City.
Second.
I would just...
We have a motion and a second. You want to keep the floor?
I would like to, thank you.
Okay.
I read a really great response from one of the church groups that said, even though you can't put hats and scarves on the statues this summer, there is still a big need in the community for people that just need, like at the Hope Center, they put together hygiene kits is what they call them, that with soap and shampoo and things like that. So there's plenty of ways to reach out, even during the summer months, to help people in need. And I wanted to just make that really clear, that just because you can't put hats and scarves on the statues, it doesn't mean you still can't help.
Okay, thank you. And we have a motion and a second for approval on item number 33. All those in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion carries. Now we'll go on to item number 46. Richie, would you read that one in, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Item 46 is to authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign a settlement agreement between the City of Rapid City, Lamar Advertising of South Dakota, LLC, and TLC Properties Incorporated, DBA Lamar Properties Incorporated. Mayor, if I may, I'll make a motion to approve and retain the floor if I get a second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the item, and go ahead.
Before I make the city staff a little nervous about what I'm about to say here, they can cut me off as whenever they feel that I'm getting into a very delicate area. Folks, what I'm concerned about this proposal or the settlement agreement, just as you are. But it's a compromise, and compromises are never comfortable. We're going along on two different tracks on this. One is going to be proceeding into the federal court, and the settlement for me is really amounting to what we are going to do on the state level, and that has to do with the 6 billboards that are in question. So that's the area that I'm uncomfortable with, and as well as the area of shortening up the distance. But again, here in South Dakota, specifically Pennington County, we are going to be the same distance as the rest of Pennington County. Again, it's a compromise. I'm not totally comfortable with it, but I'm going to move to approve it simply because for me, it's how much more are we going to spend in litigation yet? Do we need to deserve to spend that money in that fashion? Is that a wise choice of making that decision to spend some more money on the state level? I'll leave it at that, so I'm not making staff any more uncomfortable. Thank you. I'll yield the floor.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll go to Darla Drew.
Thank you, Mayor. I came in kind of on the middle of this. And I have to say, for myself, I grew up in Rapid City. And as far as I'm concerned, a lot of my landscape is gone anyway. Whether it's homes or developments, stores, whatever it is. Skyline Drive, when somebody put up a house on Hangman's Hill, I was like, game over. I couldn't believe that would be, but that's private property. It's not for me to say how they use it. But I felt that somehow I lost something in Rapid City. And so I'm going to support the compromise. One thing I feel really strongly about is millennials and even Gen Xers don't care about billboards. When I was in Portland with some friends, they just went to Yelp. They just went to their handheld devices. So if anybody is looking at the future, 10, 20 years down the road, I don't see much reason, much purpose for billboards. Lamar might have to change their marketing policies because they're not going to be relevant. They're going to be obsolete. That's my feeling. I know my kids don't look at billboards when they're looking for where they're going to stay. I don't. I mean, I still go online and just do it in advance. Or if you're going to find a good restaurant, most of us really just going to get out the smartphone and look at that. So I think when we're thinking really long-term future, we don't have to stop them. This will stop itself.
Okay, now on to Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I feel compelled to comment on this issue since I was not since the beginning been in on this, but pretty close, sat through a few council meetings where, and I can honestly say that sitting on this side of the dais, working behind the scenes on it, trying to find something that made sense to eliminate some of the billboards we have going forward. Some of the old ones we have, reduce by zoning the billboards that we have going forward. But there was no compromise in mind on any side, and I'm talking on this piece right here from the administration across the board. They made it a political football. It turned into a political football. That's how we end up with what we have. And I admire the people with the passion that did the initiatives. They went out, they beat the streets hard. They believe in what they're talking about, and I have the tendency to agree with them. I had a conversation with our lawyers earlier saying, if we can win this thing and win it, why are we compromising? For one thing, I don't look at it as a compromise. I believe that there's an opportunity here with this mayor and this administration, from what he tells me and from what I understand from these council members, is that we can actually start bringing some billboards down if we look at this correctly. Are we going to get rid of digital billboards? No. Are we going to return and reduce them in size? Yes. Are we going to get rid of some of the ugly ones that are in town? I believe we can. I really believe that we can do that with this administration and this council. And there's not very many things I bank on lately, but I think this is an opportunity. I don't look at it as a compromise. I look at it more of an opportunity. We can litigate this out if we want. We may win, we may lose, we may, whatever the case may be. But in actuality it's not going to be the best thing for the citizens of Rapid City to keep litigating this. If calmer heads would reside over this thing, and they would have when it originally started, if this administration that was present at the time and the council that was present at the time would take the time and the energy to understand what both sides' issues were, we could have came together, we could have removed some billboards, we could have had good, solid legislation and ordinances moving forward. But it didn't happen that way. It didn't happen that way, so the people on the other side thought that they had to move forward with initiative, which they thought was correct in their manner. And we're finding out now parts of it don't, maybe not hold muster all the way. That happens. But I got to say there's wins on the side of the initiative. There's a lot of wins. And one of them was finally getting someone to listen, hitting them over the head with a hammer. But you got to believe me when I say this, nobody likes a compromise. If I go in a fight, I want to win. And I think that's probably how you people feel that spend a lot of time, energy, and effort moving forward. I think if we look at this and you spend some time speaking with the mayor and administration here, I think you'll see what the ulterior motive is here, and that is to reduce the amount of billboards we have. We're not going to stop them. That's unrealistic. We're going to reduce what we have, hopefully, and moving forward, the ones we have are going to be smaller, more manageable. I think some of the things I think that we're going to hold in contention are the motions and those types of things. So there's a lot of wins. There's a lot of wins. They're not all losses out here. It's not a compromise. This is what you do in government to make things work for everybody. And that's why the courts are there to sometimes resolve these issues, because for whatever reason, there's people that have desires, they want things done. The only way they can get them done is come out and hit you with a sledgehammer and say, listen, this is what's going to happen. I honestly believe that this is the right thing for the people. I honestly believe that this administration, I'll give them credit before this thing happens, and I hope that we don't backtrack on this. I hope it really does happen. I hope we can go through the town, identify some of these big ugly billboards, because they don't want to work on them, Lamar and Epic and those people, they don't want to work on those things anymore. They keep them there because they can't take them down. They can't work with us to get rid of them. We need to actually work with them and get rid of them and quit talking about it. Quit spending a lot of time and energy going nowhere with it. So I don't think it's a compromise in any manner. I think it's good legislation moving forward. I believe in this administration and this council that we can get it done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second on the floor to approve item number 46. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, that motion carries. That takes us on to the non-consent items, items 51 through 61. We will open public comment on 51 through 61. We have a few speaker request forms. On item number 53, Bill Hubner.
Hi, I'm Bill Hubner, President of A Steel and Recycling. Thank you, Mayor Allender, members of the council. I've sent out information packets to every council member, so you have a real good idea of what this issue is about. I want to thank so many members of the council for taking the time to listen to me, return my calls, ask questions. It's very important as a citizen of Rapid City to know that you're genuinely concerned in what happens. And all the information aside, that brings up one of the points that I really think I should talk to you right now, and that is, like Darla Drew said, I was born and raised here. You know, my family's been in business in Rapid City since 1968. I was senior class president. My kids went to school here. I really believe what I'm trying to do here is good for the community. It's good for business. It's going to take a piece of property that would be worthless because it sits behind the railroad tracks, sits beside the tank farms, and turn it in to a viable property that will pay property taxes, and it will clean up the interstate area. So I'm asking for your vote in favor of rezoning this property. Thank you.
Thank you. Also on item number 53, Peter Hendrickson.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, my name is Peter Hendrickson. I'm the property owner immediately to the west and adjacent to the subject property. I'm not commenting against Mr. Hubner's plans. I've met with him and I think his ideas to clean up Ace Recycling are reasonable and responsible. I am, however, concerned with the structure of this rezoning request. The request, as I understand it, is to blanket rezone this property from general agriculture to heavy industrial without a planned development overlay. This would open up this property to any allowable heavy industrial use with little or no input from the city. Things change. Mr. Hubner's plans could change. He could sell his property at a later date. He could sell his business at a later date, and this property would be open to any allowable heavy industrial use. To rezone this parcel from general ag to heavy industrial without a planned development overlay would not be in the best interest of the city, nor would it be sound future land use planning. I would urge the council to deny this rezoning request as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you. Now on to item number 55, Randy Olivier.
Who asked to prompt the slideshow? Is that me? Can I get some Ward 4 help? Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members, city staff, and John Roberts for your little assist there. I'm Randy Olivier, part of the steering committee with the East Madison Community Garden Project. And we do have several folks here from that steering. Could you guys raise your hand? Am I on a 3-minute curve here?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to roll then. So, much like the Lemon Garden Project in 2010, the Rapid City Police approached the West River Foundation for using a 20,000 square foot lot on the corner of East Madison and just north of the McDonald's on East North Street, if you're unaware. We did provide you a package, right, Council? You have a package speaking to this. I'm trying to pause a little bit for delay here with a slideshow. Pictures are always important. Anyhow, we've got 3 phases to this program. We've got a steering committee. Here it is. Again, in 2010, Rapid City PD approached the West River Foundation in regard to a 20,000 square foot vacant area of their lot to convert to a community garden. Since 2008, the statistic has risen for alcohol-related crime from 8% to 13% in that little circle around it. The statistic below that, over a quarter of the population in the neighborhood lives below the poverty line. Another interesting statistic is 46% of the kids in that neighborhood are in those poverty homes. So we've partnered up with various businesses, co-ops, the City of Rapid City, federal programs, to include AmeriCorps and Job Corps. We have Devaney here with AmeriCorps. Could you raise your hand? She's our volunteer. I didn't realize I could speak into both of these, John, and have stereo. As well as the state programs. It's been a great, we didn't want to get the cart before the horse, so we decided to wait until 16 to open up these beds, but Job Corps has provided the beds and the labor to put that together. We've gotten discount lumber from local vendors. This is kind of a shot of the before. It's just a vacant 20,000 square foot. Once I go yellow, I'm going to go quick, Mayor. Today, you can see that we do have garden beds lined up and ready to go. They did put the sprinkler system in. We brought the water across the street with a 6-inch main, I believe, and we're ready for sprinkler systems. We will have an on-off switch, which allows us to regulate when that water shuts off at night so that we don't have vandals, and we will have a lockbox over that. And nutshell, this is kind of what it looks like visually. We'll have trees around it. We'll have a little play area for kids in the top left corner. Eventually a greenhouse. We've even talked about having a truck eventually that allows people to see how they can grow vegetables and how to cook vegetables and go to different areas of Rapid City as well. We are requesting a waiver of water fees for the garden. We've had different grants and things of that nature that allow us to pay for the process, and this is what we're here for tonight. And I'm not yellow, Mayor, so I'm green. That's it. I don't know if anyone has questions or if that's appropriate for them.
We may have someone ask questions when we're addressing the item on the agenda.
Okay.
So thank you.
Thank you.
And now on to item number 56. We have Gigi.
Hello, I'm Gigi Loggy, Executive Director of the Allied Arts Fund. Honorable Mayor and distinguished City Council, I wanted to say thank you so much for your support of the arts, our 14 organizations underneath the Allied Arts Fund umbrella, and the 16 arts organizations that receive funding from the city. So I wanted to say thank you for your support. I would love to sit down and visit with the City Council members that did not approve that item. You know, I'd love an opportunity to sit down and show you facts and figures, because I know that the city definitely looks at facts and figures. I have a PowerPoint that I brought today, but I'll also bring it back in June and July when we start going through the budgets. So if you have any questions, but I did bring packets for everyone. So thank you so much for your support of the arts in Rapid City and the Black Hills.
Thank you. Okay, and that takes us to item number 51. And can we have that read in by Amanda Scott?
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 51 is the second reading of ordinance number 6092, an ordinance to update the snow removal procedure in the city of Rapid City by amending Chapter 10.48 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carries.
Item number 52 is the second reading of ordinance number 6094, the supplemental appropriation number 1 for fiscal year 2016. I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second to approve that item. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, say no. Motion carries. No. Pardon? One no. Steve Laurenti.
Item number 53 is the first reading of ordinance number 6089, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, rezoning the within described property as requested by Renner and Associates LLC for a rezoning from general agricultural district to heavy industrial district for property generally described as being located south of Elgin between East North Street and North Elkvale Road. This item was continued from the February 16th meeting. I'd like to make a motion to deny and retain the floor if I can get a second. Thank you. The reason I'm making the motion of denial, and Bill, if you wouldn't mind if I'd ask your opinion on this, but as Bill's approaching the podium, the reason I'm making this is that Bill had stated at the Planning Commission and asked this to be continued because we were looking at a denial before. The reason that I'm making the request for the denial, and Bill, my question to you is, I cannot support this being rezoned to just heavy industrial without the planned development designation. And so my question to you is, would you rather have this denied outright, or would you rather have it approved with a development designation?
I would rather have it approved as heavy industrial, because I have to do a conditional use permit after this.
Bill, that's not the question.
The answer that you gave me was no, there was no to both of them.
Okay, no to both of them.
At least I don't quite understand. Say it again, please.
If the choice is that, because I can't support just rezoning it to heavy industrial, it just leaves the city out of any future development on that full land forever in perpetuity. So I can support rezoning this to heavy industrial with a planned development designation, so that as you go through with your plans, which, as I told you before, I fully support your idea that you've presented, but we do need to represent the city and protect that entire neighborhood going forward. And a planned designation, a planned development designation, just allows you to come back to the Planning Commission and show what that plan is going to look like as you go into each section of that property, because you haven't reduced the size of what you're asking for rezoning. The rezoning request is still the full acreage out there. I know there's been discussion of trying to reduce the acreage to what you're going to disturb at this time and just have that rezoned. So there's been a lot of options discussed, but you haven't changed this original request. And so my question to you is tonight, would you rather have this request totally denied so that you can go back and rework it to get a smaller acreage rezoned, or would you rather have the full acreage that's presented tonight rezoned heavy industrial with a planned development designation?
Neither.
Okay. So I make the motion
May I ask
to
you,
deny.
have you?
Thank you. I yield the floor, Mayor.
Okay, now we'll go to Chad Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to approve. Substitute motion, excuse me, to approve. Okay, thank you. I just support businesses in this town. I know it's hard to do business in this town. I understand the spirit of what the staff is after, but I think that the applicant's proven himself as a contributor to this, our city for years and paid taxes, and I think that by my estimation, he's done a good job of managing what he has, and I think we should just continue to support him and his business going forward. Thank you.
Okay, and just for the record, we had a substitute motion to approve this item and was seconded by, was that Ron Weifenbach?
Right.
Okay. And now we'll go to Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I find it a little bit argumentative that we ask him a question that gives him no out. I believe that he came here originally with the plan to rezone as heavy industrial. I believe the city of Rapid City makes zoning laws, zoning regulations, and I think that's what he is requesting, so I think it would be appropriate to venture that direction and not put Mr. Huebner in a position of no win. I visited this site. I visited the site that he proposes. Mr. Huebner is in an ugly business, but he's also in a business that's a beautiful business. We talked earlier about billboard proliferation, things in our city. We have scenic Rapid City representation here. Could you imagine if we didn't have Mr. Huebner taking care of the scrap metal, getting it out of here? And there's at times when it's not profitable to be in this business. Mr. Huebner has been fortunate that he's been in the business for a long time, being able to keep his business in the times that are up and down. Right now we're in the times that are down. And so, but yet he still removes the scrap from the community, scraps it out, tries to recycle it, which we all want to do. The site that he's looking at, I heard the argument from the planning commission that said if we allow this particular zoning, well, they could build a chemical plant. I said, yeah, you're right. That's allowable. But the other fact is that Mr. Huebner, what he's trying to do is more restrictive than a chemical plant. His process has to go through a use on review, meaning that it has to meet all the criteria for a use on review. Somewhat similar to a planned unit development, except for it doesn't hang on forever, where he has to keep coming back and coming back and trying to meet criteria that somebody predetermines after the fact. What he's asking for is zoning that's eligible for him within our community, within the area that he's requested. It's simply buffered by 3 mountains on all sides, and in the front it's buffered by big, giant, huge gasification or gas containers. So I venture to say that I've driven by his business on several occasions over the years. It's as beautiful as it can look, and some people's junk is their treasures. And so we appreciate the hard energy, hard work you put into your establishment over there. I think that what you're asking for is reasonable. Thank you.
John Roberts.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I just kind of want to reiterate a little bit more about what Mr. Weifenbach said, because I agree with him. This property is a very unique piece of property, and it's basically going to keep its zoning in itself. With the railroad tracks there, you're never going to have any really heavy uses. The railroad's never going to allow huge amounts of traffic across that railroad, so really the only good option we have, or really good option we have, is heavy industrial. And the possibility of Mr. Huebner being able to put a spur line in there, there's just nowhere else in Rapid City this can be done. This is, in my opinion, the perfect zoning for this property. We could put a PUD on it, but why hold our thumb on him? I mean, we have no reason to do that. He's been in business for 40 plus years, and he probably will be in business for another 40 plus years. So I just want to see this go forward. I want to see this approved, and I want to see him get on with business in Rapid City. Thank you.
Jerry Wright.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to speak on behalf of Ace and Bill. I've known them for a long time also. My dad and his uncle drove truck in the 50s and 60s for Buckingham, so it's been a long time I've known them, trust them. And also, in 1974-75, when I first came back to Rapid City, I worked for the planning department and worked on the original 3-mile land use plan, and we designated that as industrial in 1974-75. I also want to add that I'm doing this a lot because I trust Bill and his family and his word. You know, I worked with him for 15 years in the recycling industry, and him and Pacific Steel, but a lot had to do with Ace and Bill. And what they said they would do, they did, and they helped bring Rapid City's recycling program to the success it is and was. And we were handling $500,000 to $600,000 a year at times in products that people considered junk. but Bill did it, and we did it, and I'm just going with him because I trust him. Thank you.
Darla Drew.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to say I'm going to vote in favor of this development being heavy industrial. And one of the reasons is I like to think about things in the future. I like to think about the things that we're doing here will really affect our city in the future. And he's taking scrap metal. He's actually thought about where he's going to put it, and it's right near access to a railroad. This is sustainability. That's what he's working towards. That's what we're working towards as a city. And we're going to have a presentation about sustainability a little bit from now. And when we think about the future of this town, and that's where the scrap metal is going to go, it's an area that people aren't going to see it. I don't think it's going to be any blight. And I've been by this site. So I really can say yes to this because I think it's sustainability in action. Thank you.
Now we'll go to Brad Estes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to support this, but, ACE, this company provides a great service that this community needs, and I've gone out there 3 times now, and I have some pause about zoning 40 acres, just doing a wholesale zoning of 40 acres to heavy industrial. But as I look at the topography, I'm pretty comfortable that if this land, and that's a gamble. We're hoping that this land stays in the Huebner family and Ace Steel and is used for the purpose that we're being told, because, I have a lot of respect for Alderwoman Scott and my good friend Pete Hendrickson. And the door we open up, if this land ever gets sold, is I'm on our page and the heavy industrial, and when you look at the uses that once we zone this, and let's say the Huebners decide not to do this, they can sell this land, and there's a list of about 20 uses that land could be used for, that we give up any right at all to have comment on. And Mr. Weifenbach touched on a lot of them, and the Huebners do have to have a conditional use permit. But I do have, I feel I see where Mr. Hendrickson stands, because you've got an ammonia plant, asphalt manufacturing, chemical, plastic power plant. There's just a lot of uses when you wholesale zone something that we give up the rights to. As I said, I am going to support this. I believe the Huebners are this is going to stay with them. They're going to use it for what they say, and I think it'll be very well hid with their plan. And but I understand, I fully understand where Alderwoman Scott's coming from and the concerns of the adjoining landowner, Mr. Hendrickson. Thanks.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor for approval. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, motion passes with 1 no from Amanda Scott. Next item, please, number 54.
Item number 54 is the first reading of ordinance number 6102, an ordinance designating the the Rapid City Fine Arts Council as the entity responsible for the management and coordination of the artistic activities in the area commonly known as Art Alley by adding section 2.80.060 to the Rapid City Municipal Code. I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Second by Darla Drew. We'll go to Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm not sure what ordinance is in place that allows the painting to take place in the alley on private business walls in the first place. So I guess the question would be to Mr. Landine, our city council, whatever person. What is there an ordinance in place or something that allows this activity to take place?
Mr. Landine.
Thank you, Mayor.
No, there's no ordinance in place that requires the painting, or it's really up to the individual property owners. What this ordinance does, the Arts Council is established by ordinance, so when the building owners and the Arts Council got together and talked about it, I know it's not complete agreement among the building owners, but the building owners wanted somebody to manage the process, and the Arts Council was the logical choice for that. Really the landowners right now, they could end Art Alley tomorrow if they wanted to by just revoking permission and all getting together and doing that. But I think there is a group of building owners that still want to see if they can salvage Art Alley and get it back on track and participate. And they've been dealing with the Arts Council and then the police department, and they came and asked me if we could put this ordinance together, looking at it because the Arts Council is established by ordinance, and this wasn't a role that was spelled out for them in the ordinance that created them. I thought it was appropriate to bring forward an ordinance in order to, if this was going to be the process moving forward, to formalize that and make sure it was clear to everyone they had the authority to do it. And frankly, from the conversations from the property owners, they wanted the city to take an action ratifying this, so they knew the city was involved and invested in Art Alley.
Right.
So,
I got to.
Mr. Landine, I believe I heard the question as, is there an ordinance authorizing the painting of businesses
no,
downtown?
it's done via permission of the property owner.
Okay.
So basically, if the Doll Fine Arts Center wanted to paint on their building, they could do that too.
It gets technical if it's a sign. Obviously, we regulate signs, but I'll give you an example. When Mr. Small painted the mural on the side of the Elks Theater, we didn't object to that because we decided it was artwork, not a sign.
I'm getting to my point. My point is that basically what we're doing is adding another layer of government regulation that really doesn't necessarily need to be, when the fact is if I own a building downtown, I'm the building owner, if I want someone to paint a mural on my wall, they can come to me and ask me if they could paint this specific mural on their wall, and I can say yes or I can say no. Would that be correct?
That would be correct.
Okay. So I got a piece of paper with a bunch of building owners on it, and 2 of the owners had several buildings. There was a total of 13 owners of all the buildings that were involved, and of that, the notion would have, if you just would have read it for face value, the notion would have been that 7 of the owners of the 13 were in favor of that. After further investigation, calling the owners specifically, that isn't the case. So I want to make clear, when we get that information, we rely on that information, and that's not what I was told by the building owner specifically. They didn't sign it. They had no idea what it was. I was a little bit disappointed in that fact. I'm not sure what that piece of paper meant or what it was or what the value of it is, but I do know that I have no interest in creating more regulation for the building owner when they can simply tell somebody, yep, I can paint on your building, because my other concern would be when you start getting a organization charged with saying, yep, you're going to do these permits and all this stuff, then all of a sudden, where does the liability factors come in? I've seen the indemnification papers, and I realize that those are probably worth about the paper they're written on, and getting the city involved in further liability, I'm not sure, maybe you would have another opinion on that, Mr. Landine, but I can tell you from my position, if the people at Art Alley want a specific painting on their building, I believe all you would have to do is go to that owner, that building owner, ask them if you could paint on their building, and they would either say yes or they would say no. Other than that, you're trespassing or you're destructing their property. So that would be my feelings on it, and I'll yield to my colleagues to see if there was a thought process there. But that paper that was written in there did not have those building owners' signatures on it. Just want my colleagues to know that. I did call some of them. Thank you.
Steve Laurenti.
Thank you, Mayor. And I kind of voiced quite a few questions on this particular issue at the Legal and Finance meeting. My concerns are that we designate the Fine Arts Council, Rapid City Fine Arts Council, as the management and coordination group for Art Alley. My concern is the liability situation where we have artists who will apply to the Fine Arts Council and be denied because the city has weighed in and made the Fine Arts Council the decision maker, and a artist now believes that maybe their freedom of speech or and that would be a question, Mr. Mayor, if I could ask legal counsel as well, Mr. Lundin, if I may.
Yes, you may.
Joel, can you weigh in on that? We talked a little bit about this. Mike, I have thought about this more, and to me it seems we have a lot of exposure. I mean, we have people suing the city, unfortunately, too often. I think we all know that as a council, who've ever been on here for more than a year or so knows this. So it seems to me that that would be the situation here, is that we could have some definite issues with people suing, bringing the city into a lawsuit because of some action that the Fine Arts Council has taken, which we have now designated as the decision maker, if you will, with Art Alley. Can you weigh in on that, please?
Certainly. You know, that was one of my initial concerns, but because the paintings are actually on private property, I think that the property owners have the ability to have a say in what goes on their building. So the idea is that the building owners will communicate with the Arts Council about what they want on their building. So certainly somebody could be denied, but it would be based on the property owner's desire. And I think because it focuses on the property owner, and basically the Arts Council is just acting as a facilitator for the permit system on behalf of the building owners, then it isn't an issue. Now, I certainly can't guarantee you that somebody won't ever sue us. I do not find the liability to be great. And frankly, if somebody did sue and we did get a ruling against us, my guess is then the whole system collapses and it's probably the end of Art Alley. Because at that point, we certainly don't want a situation where anybody can go do anything they want on a private building owner's property. So I think if that ever did occur, that would be the end of Art Alley. But again, I'm not overly concerned about it.
Thank you. I yield.
John Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And reading through the ordinance and everything else that was linked on here, I also have some concerns about this. First of all, the ordinance is extremely weak at best. And if you look through the ordinance and get to the very end about what, if they violate their permits, we could possibly charge them with criminal vandalism, or we could possibly charge them with, I mean, if we're going to write an ordinance, at least write something in there where there's some kind of a penalty towards it. But I do agree with Mr. Weifenbach and Mr. Lorente that, and also with something that Joel Landine said, where this is private property, I don't really understand why the city's got to get involved at all. If we don't get involved, there's no liability. I mean, if the Arts Council wants to be the facilitator with the private business owners, let them. That's a decision they would have between the private business owners. But once the city starts writing an ordinance and getting involved, I can't believe there isn't some kind of liability or the possibility of some kind of liability. So the way that it's written now, I think there needs to be a lot more discussion. I'm just not very comfortable with this ordinance as written, and also the city being involved too much in this. I think that I would love to see the Arts Council oversee this with the building owners if that's what the building owners wanted. I just don't feel comfortable with the city getting involved with this at all. Thank you.
Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. The only reason I'm buzzing in is I understand all the concerns because we have had this discussion about Art Alley for several years now, and we have heard from the property owners as well as the Arts Council and anyone who's interested in art. Art Alley, as you know, is on the internet and everything else, and We've heard from both sides saying that basically art is in the eye of the beholder, and some people will view some of the works on the buildings downtown as art, and some of them won't appreciate what's on the buildings. When it comes down to the private property of the building owners downtown, though, the reason I'm buzzing in is that Mr. Terry Nelson could not make it tonight, but he was at the Legal and Finance meeting. He is only one building owner from downtown, but he did make an effort to go to Legal and Finance, and he did ask either Richie Nordstrom or myself to represent him tonight, just to let the public know that as a building owner in downtown, he is supportive of trying this. And so he was supportive of the ordinance because in his mind, I hope I'm not misspeaking for him, but in his eye, the building owners have the right to say whether they want to participate in this to start with. And then those property owners that are willing to participate in this give permission to the Arts Council then to operate the permit system to allow artists to participate in doing a mural or anything on the building. With that said, it still resides, I believe, as the city attorney said, it's the building owners themselves that will have to give permission. And at any time, they can revoke their permission, and it will make the Arts Council go back and be very communicative to those building owners. Because if they do want to keep Art Alley alive, there is going to have to be great communication and really working to get the approval from the building owners on what goes on those buildings downtown. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Jerry Wright.
Thank you, Mayor. I support this, and I know several years we started discussing this and how we were going to enforce it, work with it. The Arts Council was gracious enough to take it on. They've come up with this project or this method of making it work, and I think it is a way of making it work. And I think to clarify the issue, I counted there were 21 properties on this sheet of paper, and some were signed by representatives of companies, maybe not the owner, but agent or proxy or authorized or general manager. And I counted 21 yes and only 4 no. So I think that the ayes have it, in my opinion. Thank you.
Darla Drew.
Really? Okay. Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple questions for Pepper Massey, if I could, please.
Okay.
Would you please introduce yourself?
Pepper Massey, Executive Director, Rapid City Arts Council.
How long has it been since it's been called the Rapid City Fine Arts Council?
Well, we were incorporated in 1968.
But 12 years since you've been the Fine Arts Council. Anyway, I know you've been working on this for a very long time, and that your position in this has been to partially do prevention and also to do a way for people to access Art Alley and not to put too many I don't know, restrictions on art. So what do you know about this? So many of the building owners saying no to this project. This is the first I've heard of it.
And I'm confused about it as well. We reached out to, if not the building owner, the individual that was told that that was their designee. So I'd love to have a conversation with Mr. Wiffenbach about that later to find out who that individual was that was disputing it. As far as I know, everyone on the list that gave their approval absolutely gave their approval. And what we're trying to do is facilitate a process between the building owners and the artists so that we can keep that creative space open. It is an attraction to the community. We also want to work with law enforcement to make certain that their job isn't as difficult as it is today. And I know we have some building owners here if you wanted to speak with them.
Actually, I just wanted to know what your thought process was on that, and I think we're going to have the police chief bringing in here on what this will do for them and prevention of tagging as opposed to actual art projects. So thank you, Pepper.
Darla, you can ask the police chief a question, otherwise
Okay.
he won't be
I would
buzzed
like
in.
to.
Go ahead.
Yes. Chief Jaggeris, how do you see this ordinance as helping you to prevent the kind of graffiti work that we don't want to see in Art Alley and protect the building owners that don't want anything on their buildings at all?
Really, what it will do is it will clarify the difference between vandalism and art. And really, the main difference is, does the painter have permission from the building owner to be painting on the building? That is what distinguishes the difference between the two for us. And right now, over the last 10 years, as Art Alley has evolved, it has basically changed into a state where I would call it has an unintended state of lawlessness. And it's mild, but I was just there this afternoon and looked at some of the paint that's there, and there is quite a bit of what I would consider profanity or vulgarity and just slop and purposeful painting over other person's painting. And if we're going to be in a position to get a handle on the painting that occurs there, as far as making sure that the painter has permission from the building owner, this process is by far the best process that has been proposed yet. I'm very thankful that somebody from the community has stepped forward and said, we are willing to help support this so that it can continue to be sustained. So with that in mind, I highly encourage your support of this ordinance.
Well, I want to support this ordinance, but just so I'm clear, that if you drive up to somebody, you ask them for their permit, and they don't have it, then that gives you the ability to stop them, arrest them. What does that do for you?
Correct. That will clarify that they have not received permission from the building owner, and that will give us the ability to take enforcement action. As it is today, there is a climate or a culture that exists that people from the community don't understand that you even need permission. There is a degree of chaos that's involved in the environment, and for us to make an arrest of somebody that had no intent of wrongdoing overall is really bad for our city if we were to be in a position to need to do that.
So do you plan on doing some signage for the ordinance so that people will know that this isn't allowed anymore? And they just
The
can't-
Rapid City Arts Council has a plan for that, and we'll work in coordination with the city to accomplish that.
Okay, thank you. I'm out of time.
Now we'll go to Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. To start off, I wanted to reaffirm that Mr. Nelson did say the things that Alderwoman Scott brought forward and made those arguments in front of the Legal and Finance Committee. And he also mentioned Mr. Geiger as another cooperative building owner. Mr. Geiger, do you have anything to add to what has been already said? Because right now the issue is, do the building owners support this?
My name is Lee Geiger. I'm an architect. My business is located at 613 Main Street, which fronts Art Alley. Historically, Art Alley is an experiment that's failed. And so everyone understands that the owners were never really confronted or given a fair opportunity at the outset for this to actually develop. A few rumors were spread, a few promises were made, and suddenly we had people working in the alley painting on all the buildings without permission, and it put the police department and the owners in a very, very upside down position from the standpoint that if we called and said there's someone on the neighbor's building or on our building and they're painting and they don't have permission, the police would come through, and they really had no authority to distinguish what was truth. It was virtually impossible. And so as a result of that, the freedom to deface people's property increased. At one point I requested from the city attorney, and this is early on, does the city really have the authority to overlook what's happening on the backs of these buildings? I've spent a lot of time over the years in historic architecture, and frankly, a lot of people could not qualify for historic buildings anymore with the defacing that has gone on with their buildings, one significant sale has been lost because of it, of historic property. Now, to get to present day, we have worked with Pepper and her staff and various building owners downtown for a long time to try and get this resolved. This permit process that we have in front of us is very close to something that we proposed about 2 or 3 years in, and frankly, the city council at that time said, we don't want to touch it. We don't want to determine what's art, what isn't. We don't want to get in that discussion.
Mr. Geiger, if I can halt you for,
Yes.
just so I don't run out of my time, is because we're limited on time, so I just want to
I'll get to the point.
conserve a little bit of my time. Thank you. So thank you for the answer. I believe you answered it for me, is that, yes, the building owners support
Building
this.
owners, by and large, all that I've talked to are in favor of it. In relation to anyone calling property owners since that list came out, I have another property owner next to me. Neither one of us were called.
Thank you. And there are a couple of other points that I wanted to make is that this ordinance raises a comfort level for me for the police department to be able to determine whether these are artists or are they vandals. It gives them that capability of doing that. They don't have to decide in this case, or as it is currently on the books right now, or not on the books, if you will, is that they are in the position, they're in an uncomfortable position of trying to figure out what is freedom of speech, or is it vandalism? I don't want to put the police department in that position. I want to take them out of that. That's what this ordinance does. The other part of it is that I'm reading the ordinance different than my esteemed colleague, Mr. Roberts. I am seeing this ordinance as very definitive rather than ambiguous. There may be some more tweaking in the future that needs to be done to it, but as I'm reading it, if somebody violates this permit process, we can prosecute them. So that's why I'm comfortable with this. Thank you. I'll yield the floor.
Now we'll go to Chad Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess my time on the council, we first started this about 2012, 2013. We started talking about regulating Art Alley and trying to figure out ways to clean it up and make it more, a little more regulation, a little more control of what's going on down there. And the general consensus seems to always been that it's a very fine line between regulation and just doing what's right for the community, because it seems like Art Alley is extremely organic in nature. People just show up and start doing things, and we have to obviously protect the rights of the property owners like Mr. Geiger and Mr. Nelson and those who have been mentioned. And so it's hard for the city to get involved, and that's why we always kind of laid back, in my opinion, and stayed away from it, because it was, the problem is once you can't put this genie back in the bottle. You can't stop Art Alley now. People are just going to move to other alleys and start painting other places, and it's going to turn into a mess downtown, is my opinion, of course, but I think it's a pretty educated opinion. We've discussed this a lot of times, and so if we don't give them a space to do the things they need to do and to express themselves and have their place to put these art pieces up, they're going to go to other alleys and start doing other places in the city, and then we're going to have a more widespread mess. I think that this allows a good compromise of hopefully keeping it in one area where it can be regulated somewhat. We can help protect the property rights and keep this. Actually, is a very unique thing, and we're really actually pretty lucky to have it. Whether you like art or not, you can look at some of the tourism pieces that have been written about Art Alley, and it's kind of something the city is actually known for in some circles as being pretty unique and pretty cool. And the people that work down there and do the serious art down there do an excellent job. I don't know a lot about graffiti art, but there's people in this audience that do, and they can tell you that this is a pretty unique thing to have in this city, and we really should be proud of it. And so whatever we can do to help, once again, walk that fine line between property rights and or expression, freedom of expression in the arts, I think we can do. This hopefully is a step in the right direction, and I appreciate everybody's efforts to work together on this. And we've had contributors from everybody all over the city, including like Black Hills Energy, who came in a couple years ago and changed all the light bulbs, made it more bright down there to help reduce some of the crime and things like that. So I appreciate everybody working together on this. Hopefully this will work, and hopefully we won't have to talk about it a whole lot more, but it'll give the law enforcement some direction too, because I know they've been kind of trying to stay out of it, and their hands are a little bit tied, so to speak. So once again, thank you very much.
Now we'll go to Brad Estes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to support this, but wasn't that I didn't have some reservations of when it comes to the city getting involved in private property, but the fact is, we do have Art Alley, and I think this is the best chance of our best and last probably effort and chance to make Art Alley work. And what it does is it spells out who the players are, so the police know if they're working with a permitted artist. The building owners know who to go to, and I just think this is our last and best opportunity to see if we can make Art Alley work, and I'm going to support it. Thanks.
Okay, now we'll go to Steve Laurenti for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. One question, and I'll just leave this open for either the Attorney's Office, Mr. Lundin, or Police Chief to weigh in if they would like. But what I'm still in a quandary over is, if there were a permitting process put in place without this ordinance, how does this ordinance make the permit more enforceable? If the crux is they have a permit, it's easy to identify them because the police can just walk up and say, do you have a permit? So my question is, if the Arts Council starts doing permitting now without this ordinance, how does this ordinance improve that permitting process? That's my question. Thank you.
You want to direct that question at anyone in particular, or?
Mayor, I think I can take that one. I think the idea is that because the Arts Council, again, is established by ordinance, and that ordinance lays out what the responsibilities and duties of the Arts Council are, because this is an expansion of those responsibilities and it's not something that would clearly fit under their other responsibilities, the point of the ordinance is just to make clear that they have the city's blessing, that they have the authority to do that under their, I guess, their directive from the city through the ordinance that created them.
Just a follow-up, Mayor, if I can, real quick. To that, Joel, without the ordinance, my question again, I guess, I don't quite understand if the enforcement is the permit and they're able to do that permit, how this ordinance makes that easier for enforcement. It's private property, so I'm still...
I think people are getting caught up. I frankly wouldn't anticipate that the city would prosecute people for the violation. It's just going to delineate who is a vandal and who isn't. There's already laws on the books that would cover vandalism or intentional damage to private property, and the severity of it is usually dependent on the amount of damage that's caused. As you can imagine, if somebody is painting on a building, it could be a pretty significant and a felony amount, which the city wouldn't have the authority to prosecute anyway. So if you don't have a permit, you're going to get charged with the violation of state law, which is either vandalism or intentional damage to private property.
So could the Arts Council do the permitting today without this ordinance? Would they be breaking some sort of rule?
I haven't gone back and looked at the unamended ordinance for what their specific authority is, but my recollection from when I drafted this and was first asked to draft it is that it was not clear they would have the authority to do it. Now, if they implemented it and everyone followed it and participated, maybe, but again, the request from the Arts Council, from the PD, and from the owners was that the city had amend the ordinance so that it was clear that they could do this.
Thank you.
Now, John Roberts for 3 minutes and 15 seconds.
Oh, that's not going to be enough. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I ask a question to Joel Landine, please?
Yes.
Joel, just to feed off of the question that Steve Laurenti had just asked you, if we just gave them direction and told them they could do it, would we have to put this into ordinance form?
That would really be up to them of whether they were comfortable to do it or not. Again, if nobody challenged it or challenged the authority, then sure, I think they could do it.
Okay. Thank you very much. Another thing that I just kind of want to touch on, I'm not against the permitting process. I think that that's a great idea between the business owners, the Arts Council, and having the PD have the ability to know who is and who should be painting on these buildings. I really hope, because this looks like this is going to pass, and I really hope that this does work, but unless we as a PD, or you as a PD, us as a community, are watching Art Alley 24 hours a day, how much do you think and I'll direct this towards the chief, if you don't mind, chief. You could, it's kind of a, you're going to be guessing on this, but how much of this tagging, vandalism, do you think that you'll be able to cut down with this permitting process?
You know, to put it in a percentage would be difficult, but I will tell you, you use the word hope, and I would say that the sustainability of Art Alley has hope with the enactment of this ordinance. Currently, without something like this taking place, I don't think it would have hope.
And I will agree with you there 100%. I know the way it's going right now, there's not a lot of hope with it. But I will still be voting against this because I believe we have the ability to do it without putting it in ordinance form. And like I said, it looks like it's going to pass, so I hope it does work. Thank you.
Okay, the motion's to approve. All in favor of this motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Let's have a roll call.
Estes. Lewis. Drew. Roberts. Nordstrom. Scott. Laurenti. Wright. Wyffenbach. Motion passes 6-3.
Okay, thank you. Now we're on to item number 55 under Legal Finance Committee items. We'll go to Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 55 is to waive the water fees for the East Madison Street Community Garden. I make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll go to Jerry Wright.
Just a question, I support this, but are there other items like compost and so forth that will be given to them? Do we need any formal action to give that to them? Okay, then thank you. That's it.
John Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You're probably getting sick of me talking. I don't talk this much typically. This is a wonderful project that I fortunately got roped into helping on this. And if Mr. Oliver wants to step up here, I can ask him a few questions and put him on the spot a little bit. Fortunately, I have the opportunity to work with Randy, and we are in the same office, and he's a wonderful guy, and he came to me and said, John, I want you to sit on this committee. And I said, yes, I have nothing but time, so I'd be happy to help you. But Randy, you know, and maybe I'll ask Mr. Travell a question too. So why don't you step up here, Ron, because we can go back a little further to the Lemon Street Garden and what a wonderful job that did to that neighborhood, how it cut down in crime, how it brought the neighbors together, and that's what we're hoping to do with this new garden in this new area. But this garden is this one's the king of gardens compared to Lemon Street Garden. But Ron, I know that you came in on the beginning of Lemon Street, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you were involved with it. And can you just kind of tell this council what you saw happen in that neighborhood after that garden was implemented and what we believe is going to happen, hopefully, up there at Madison Street?
Yes, sir. I've been in law enforcement for 18 plus years now, and I've been involved in a lot of different community projects, many of which bring citizens together within their neighborhood and help reduce crime. And the community garden concept has really worked well so far on Lemon Avenue, and it's brought that community together so much so that a lot of people have met their neighbors and got to know their neighbors personally to the point where they actually do things with each other instead of just, hi, how you doing, and going to their house. So it has been it's been an amazing journey thus far, and this project here, like you said, is going to be the mother of all gardens, so to speak, and I'm very hopeful that it will bring this neighborhood together as well, because like Mr. Olivier mentioned earlier, it's a poverty, lower income neighborhood. So,
thank you very much, Ron, and I just really appreciate everything that you do in North Rapid and for Rapid City. So you can sit down now. I'm done with you. Now, Randy, I do want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to become involved a little in this. And when this started, I kind of thought, wow, what is going to happen? And then it started coming together, and the drawings came together, and the water got put in, and just so much help from the community. I just want to thank everybody that's been involved in it. And going forward, I hope we have more of these projects, and I hope that the council is willing to step up and help with these projects, because it offsets so many costs of crime through the PD. And I mean, these projects are just absolutely wonderful when they come together. So I guess the question that I had to ask you is, are we ready to get this thing up and going next spring?
We are ready this spring. Yes, sir.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you very much, Randy. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight has been fortunate for my colleagues to be able to listen to me talk all the time and use up my time. I have to keep my mouth shut, but I got another 5 minutes. The 4 people back there, thank you, Barb, Ron, and the gal in the middle there, and Randy. And I want to say, I don't typically take this opportunity very often to thank a councilman, but I want to thank John. He was involved in the Lemon Street project up there a long time ago. I want to thank then Chief Allender, now Chief Jagaris. They're right. The simple little thing, and I knew it wasn't going to be simple with Mr. Olivier involved. There's no way. And I'm sure he put John in a chokehold to get him to do it. But I mean, I just, what you guys have done up there is to be applauded. I think that we got a good model going that hopefully we can move into the other parts of the city in areas where we're having a difficult time. And somebody had mentioned, it's really, the neighbors meeting each other, and we talk about racial relations in Rapid City and those types of things. And one thing I always tell people, it's really hard to dislike or hate or whatever somebody you know. When you're out there in the community and you're planting tomatoes next to somebody, it's really hard to hate that person no matter what their skin color, no matter how much they make you mad. There's always a little bit more forgiveness when you know somebody. So getting to know your neighbors is important. I appreciate, John, what you've done up there. And I know you're involved early on at 11th Street when it was experimental up there. Barb, all you guys back there. I mean, simple little solutions. You don't have to throw millions of dollars at it. It's just incredible what you guys have done. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. If I can recall Mr. Olivier, please.
Yes.
No. Not this time. Mr. Olivier, we kind of brushed over, I think, in my opinion, one of the key people that's involved with your group is the folks from the Job Corps. Could you introduce her again? We've been identifying her as the lady in the middle, but she has a name, and I think it's important to recognize the Job Corps.
Sure. Devaney, do you want to come up and speak with me, or can she do that?
If she's comfortable with doing that, yes.
She's with AmeriCorps, which she got the Job Corps involved, though, and I'll let her speak to that.
Good evening, how are you?
Good evening. Would you state your name for the record?
Absolutely, Devaney Crafton, and I am an AmeriCorps Vista.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And the reason I'm very interested in your group is because I used to be a commissioner with the Commission of National Community Services. Very noble group, very worthwhile, and being that you're involved in this, thank you very much for taking some role in this and being involved in it. So again, thank you very much for your group being in this. Thank you. If you've got any additional comments, I got a few seconds left.
Me? Yes. Well, I think this is a fabulous project, and I am very lucky to have been brought on. The organization as a whole focuses on the alleviation of poverty, and as the council member was saying, this is a pretty simple solution that doesn't cost millions of dollars, and there are other simple solutions that we can do that have real impact on communities. And so I'm very excited to have a partnership with the police department and with other real estate groups in the community to see how we can watch the community blossom, I hope.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time and your involvement. Again, thank you. I yield.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The motion on the floor is to approve this item. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carries.
Item number 56 is to approve the fiscal year 2016 Allied Arts funding allocation for the community investments. I make a motion to approve.
Got a motion and a second for approval, and we'll go to Darla Drew.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple of questions for Gigi Lagi. Is it that the right pronunciation? Gigi is the executive director. So, and also thank you to Pauline for getting me the full budget, profit and loss, all those things, the balance sheets. I got a couple questions for you. As I was looking over your budget, I did see that there was a total fundraising effort of $250,000 for last year. Is that correct?
Correct.
You know, and change. And then I just took out some of the costs, your salaries. I took out in-kind. I took what the city gives you guys as a city subsidy, which I totally believe in. I fully support the city subsidy. But that left me with a figure about $84,000. Can you tell me what that went to? Was there more dispersal to the member groups then?
Darla, we have grants that we give out through our Adelstein grant. We have our 100% Giving Board grants that we give out. I purchase tickets from our arts organizations and I give them to Big Brothers Big Sisters and to Wavy and to our Title I schools. So a lot of those items fall into expenses. The 45th anniversary publication that's included in your packet, we paid for that. The Allied Arts Fund paid for that through ads, and then we pay to have it mailed out to, there were over 5,000 that received that. And so those expenses for fundraising fall into that additional amount.
So the groups past the city subsidy, they didn't receive any further funding from your group except through the Adelstein or specific funding?
They apply for Adelstein grants. They receive 100% giving, which is the purchase of those tickets. And then also through that publication, we're able to hopefully fill seats for them. Does that answer your question?
It does. And
everything that we do, every expense that we have is to raise money for our organizations. So in addition to the $102,000 that we receive from the city, we've raised $148,000 through the Allied Arts Fund efforts. And it takes money to be able to send out those pledge cards and to produce those pledge cards. And we try to do a lot of that in-house, but a lot of those marketing efforts cost us. And so those fall into fundraising expenses.
do you know how many organizations are helped with the Adelstein grant then?
This year we gave out $13,000 worth of Adelstein grants.
To just, people that apply, or, who gets that money?
They do not necessarily have to be an arts organization. Make-A-Wish was one of the organizations that received a grant through that. So as long as it has an arts theme to that grant request, then, they're able to receive money through that. So it doesn't have to be one of the 14 organizations.
That's what I was getting to. So thank you for your information and your appearance here tonight. And I'm going to vote to approve this for this year.
Thank you, Darla.
Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You say that with such enthusiasm, but I wanted to thank Gigi, and I understand it. I've been through a lot of budget proposals, those types of things. And one of the things that always comes up is about the environment of the arts and stuff in the community that will help your economic development thrive, those types of things. Bringing people to the city for our arts, things that you do. And I have a question, Mr. Mayor, and I would want to know if the Allied Arts Fund has ever ventured or ever received any funds from our tax that we tax from the people that benefit most from your efforts when you bring people to the city of Rapid City. That'd be our BB&B tax, or she's shaking her head no, so I guess that.
I am not aware of any tax that has gone towards the arts community.
Yeah, right now, I think it might be allocated completely to the Civic Center and the CVB, but yet there's organizations such as the arts and stuff that are truly economic drivers in our community, but yet receive no benefit, but yet are one of the driving forces. So,
Correct.
Thank you. I think I knew the answer to, but I wanted to make it on the record, so.
Thanks, Ron. And if you look at the spreadsheet that I have in there, and it shows the budgets of all of the organizations that receive funding through the city, and they have expenses of over $1 million. So you think about the salaries and, you know, the expenses they have that they're putting back into Rapid City as revenue for our city.
Absolutely.
And so
I get
it's
it, I
definitely
understand
a
it.
benefit. And if you look at the amount of tickets that are given away in the Black Hills Powwow and the amount of people that come into the Civic Center, and then they stay in Rapid City, they eat at our restaurants.
So the Allied Arts Fund helps with the powwow.
Yes, sir, through the city, yes.
Thousands of dollars to our community, and yet
Yes,
your portion
probably
of it-
millions when you think of how many people come through here.
I know my family and people that visit greatly appreciate your efforts because it's a passion that drives the artists. I mean, more than the monetary side of it. Yet we understand as leaders that without that art side of our community, which we've invested hundreds and millions of dollars into the community, other than the real small drivers, as we look at some of the things we've done that are small, but yet are huge, huge drivers. I'm hoping that we, going forward, start to shift our vision on things that haven't been working and look at things that we know work and can work with just a little bit of water on the seed. So thank you.
Thank you.
Now we'll go to Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just trying to catch up with Alderman Weifenbach on the time used tonight, so I appreciate your allowing me this effort. Though, it's Miss Laggy?
Loggy, it's German. That's
German,
correct.
yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to think of this more so an investment rather than a subsidy for the Allied Arts funding, and I look forward to supporting this allocation as well. And if you kind of understand where I'm coming from, what for the next round, we're going to be going into priority-driven budgeting process. So what I'll be looking for is your annual reports, what you can demonstrate, how that funding is being utilized, where it's going to, et cetera. And what I'm looking for in those years of reports is a trend, how that affects. And for me, that's going to be one of those determining factors within the priority-driven budgeting process.
Yes, sir, that makes sense.
Okay?
Yes.
I appreciate it. And so if you can get that information to me sooner than right before the meeting, I appreciate it. Thank you.
I did send you an email earlier.
Yes, you did. And I was able to get onto it 1 hour before the meeting. So again, it was pretty short on time. But again, I still support it.
Well, I will definitely have facts and figures for when our budget starts again in June and July.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I yield.
Okay, the motion on the floor is to approve this item. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries.
Item number 57 is to acknowledge the fiscal year 2015 annual financial report. I make a motion to acknowledge.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, and that takes us on to Community Planning and Development Services items. We'll go to Ron Weifenbach.
Item number 58, a request by Spurlit Consulting, Inc. for Joseph Carlin for preliminary subdivision plan for proposed lot. Subdivision generally described as being located north of the intersection of Carlin Street and Crane Drive. The recommendation on this is acknowledged applicant's withdrawal of the preliminary subdivision.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
Your motion is to what?
The motion is to withdraw this item.
Acknowledge the applicant's withdrawal. And we have a second to that, so all in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries.
Item 59, a request by Fisk Land Surveying Consulting Engineering, Inc. for the Kevin Tome for a preliminary subdivision plan for proposed Lot C of DeWalt subdivision, generally described as being located east of 2667 Cavern Road. Recommendation is approved with stipulations.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries.
Item number 60, a request by Howie Land Surveying for Mavis Madison for preliminary subdivision plan for proposed lots 1 and 2 of Davis Meadows subdivision, generally described as being located at the intersection of Wide View Drive and Nemo Road. Move approval with stipulations.
Second. Okay, motion and a second. And all in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carries.
Item number 61, Mayor, overview of attendance at the 12th Annual International Conference on Environmental, Cultural, Economic, and Social Sustainability. And I believe it looks like Eric Hikes is here to do a presentation. Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Good evening, members of council, Mayor, Brett, Dale, Carl, Joel. You have a stand-in, Joel, I see. So.
Wade.
And Mike. So, I have the great pleasure of presenting tonight with my two friends. We're now friends after going to Portland together, Darla and Beth Ann. The most exciting part of this is we sent 3 constituents to Portland to represent our city. That's very progressive. Kudos to us. First of all, I think we all owe the council and the mayor this presentation. In our office, we have the policy, if you go to something great and you were moved by it, come back and tell others. That's what we're doing today. And also, so you can see what you invested in here. So you sponsored us as well. So thank you for that. First of all, if anyone doesn't know about our committee, our Standing Committee on Sustainability, this is our mission statement, and you can read it. You can also see our website as part of the city's website. And the presentation I'm giving tonight is regarding our trip in January. We went to Portland for the aforementioned 12th Annual International Conference on Environmental, Cultural, and Social Sustainability. We have smart links here. So you can see all kinds of stuff. These links were available to us as attendees. Please browse them if you'd like. Use the technology. This was an international conference. The materials are all there. And if you're very interested, spend some time. It was sponsored by Common Ground Publishing. Darla, myself, and Beth Ann were there, each representing kind of various aspects. Her capacity for Darla was the city council person. Beth Ann was there as the sustainability coordinator, and I am the chair of the committee. It's a grassroots group. We're part of the Public Works Department. The themes, environmental sustainability, economic, social, and cultural context sustainability, policy and practice, and education. All things we're all very excited about. It was at Portland State University. I'm trying to move this along. I know it's getting late, but I also sat here for an hour and 15 minutes waiting for this, so I'm going to torture you a little bit tonight. So this was a global event. 250 delegates came from around the nation and around our country and around the globe. It was a very diverse group. English was not the first language of everyone there, as we learned, but there were some very brilliant and very educated people. It was a very pleasant atmosphere as well. We had a lot of discussions like this one where we formed in a circle. So Beth Ann tells me she was just in the group there. So 3 solid days of presentations we attended. A lot of them were by academics. We learned a ton. On our way there, and the night we were having burgers getting ready, we decided instead of all going to the same events, we would divide and conquer and go to different presentations. Some that was intentional. Some was also that we could meet other people. So we did get a nice compliment, and people would say, "Oh, you're from Rapid City." Well, I've met someone else from Rapid City. That's cool that you've brought more than one. So, to me, being a child of an international artist and such, and having a little bit of a global perspective, I loved it. I had some great conversations from everything from biology to how to pay forward the hotel and airline industries in the future. There were some very brilliant people there to learn from. So the trends we saw in Portland and other areas on public gardens, and I wish our presenter was still here for that, and local foods, man, that's a universal language. So, and then we went to 60 plus hours between the three of us, so I think we kind of earned our keep. So our focuses, Darla's was economic and social, which was very appropriate. Beth Ann, education and outreach. Mine was a little bit more focused on planning, being a landscape architect. And then we all found a common thread with foods, housing mixes, because that's pressing for us in our community, and then just culture. So, Darla, please give us your...
I'll try to make this quick as well. I was the only elected official there, so we did Rapid City proud with our diversity of representation. When I went to groups that were talking about economic sustainability, I think our priority-based budgeting that we're heading towards is a way that we can preserve the things that we have and also really look at the future and how we're going to improve and grow with sustainability in mind. Cultural sustainability, when I think of the Lakota people making up 15% of our population, with the Hispanic communities growing, we have a lot of organic meetings that are going on in the community, conversations. They're happening without government input or funding. We might need to step into that a little bit more and improve the Lakota art sales and powwow opportunities and just mix our communities like that. Ecological sustainability, the work being done by the Solid Waste Division and the naming of the new Sustainability Coordinator, Beth Ann Furley, is really a step in the right direction and very progressive for Rapid City. And she'll talk more about that. So the social sustainability, bringing our entire community together for events in the summer and other ways. This is really getting our community connected. I think you can feel it. You can feel the changes, and at least I can, in the way that people talk about staying here. I've been talking to young people. They're feeling better about our community as a whole because they're connected to it and they want to stay here and live here. The farmers market has a permanent home, we know that, but they want access to electricity, and one of the needs is for refrigeration and also to have music or announcements with a PA, because sometimes they do have cars or traffic in the way that they have to get moved. So a PA would be a very good addition to that growing concern. And also the food trucks are coming. We saw a lot of food trucks and food trailers and all that kind of stuff in Portland. They have really good ordinances to make them safe and legal and taxable. And I think that we have to move in that direction too, because the food trucks are coming. Thank you.
A lot of what I worked with people from Australia and England and many other countries, and food justice was a big issue. Not only the gardens that we're doing, which we are getting there in the right direction, but it's making sure that not just the very, very poor, but the middle class get the proper food to be eaten, not just the cheaper price food, the potato chips, things like that, but the proper food, grow it, the healthy food, and knowing how to cook it. So food justice was the actual word throughout the whole conference. With that, a lot of people talked about compost, which is what, of course, we are doing. We are very, when I shared what we did with compost here, they were very excited to hear about it, both with the co-compost and the yard waste compost. It helps with the gardens, gets them started. And right now, we are growing more and more in our number of gardens. I just received a new garden from another elementary school, a request for compost. Of course, we have the East Madison gardens. I'd like to somehow work to be able to get all of these gardens in some sort of a booklet or some sort of information that we know we have it, and be able to promote to other areas of the country or another sustainability conference that, yes, this is what we're doing. We are promoting the gardens. It's not just to create community, but it's also creating healthy eating. The one big thing I did bring back from there was a sustainability camp. It's not just for recycling, but it's food, water, land, air, and energy. So I'm hosting the first sustainability camp for young adults this summer. I want to move it towards adults and earlier children as time goes on. This will be a 5-day during the summer camp. So I am excited about that. It came with lesson plans and everything, and University of Utah does it right now, and many other communities throughout the country are doing the same thing. This is our new mascot, just in case you don't know. Our mascot is now Recyclone. Recycling is still huge in sustainability. Keep the natural resources out of the landfill. We will be continuing with that. There's a new marketing program out there right now on our recycling program. Eric?
My takeaways, adaptive reuse is a very excellent method. We're doing it here in Rapid City. What was once a service station is now a co-working space. What was once a factory is a place to brew beer, et cetera, et cetera. I think we're going to see that trend happen, especially in our downtown. And then our strategy, which we started out with the committee, celebrate, educate, formulate. First say what we're doing well, and then teach, and then make a plan. It's been very effective all over the world. So part of that being empowerment and organization. We're getting up a little bit of speed in our committee with both of those two, and we always use more people involved. So, and then of course, everyone said the same thing: use social media, get your message out there, make it simple, make it visible. So guess what? We did it too. So, and then we said, you know what? This wasn't so hard. We could do this. We decided to throw our own local version of a sustainability conference here in Rapid City this fall. So we'll keep you posted on that. Great continuing ed, great social interaction, learning of all kinds, and then of course showcasing what we as Rapid Cityans are doing well. So, and this is just my slide where I mentioned how we're doing things pretty well here, and we have a lot to be proud of. So, and Portland's pretty cool too. We learned a lot of tricks there. So, and then just a little plug for a couple things that are coming up and a chance to see some of these resources. Here's our Facebook for our site. Well, I guess we can't log on. Anyway, you get the idea. You can get on our Facebook page. We've got an event coming up at Main Street Square on this 19th for Earth Hour. And then also, we're also being part of something fun. Green Drinks has finally come back into place, a chance for like-minded individuals who like to talk about sustainability. We're getting together shortly after at the garage. So that's also on Facebook. So with that, if you got any questions, we'd be happy to answer them. And thank you wholeheartedly from the three of us for allowing us to do that. So.
Okay, great. Can we have a motion to acknowledge from Lewis and second from Roberts, and we'll go to Jerry Wright.
Darla, Eric, and Beth, thank you. One question, and it's probably more for Beth. You're talking about food and our compost program, which is great. What can we do as a council to support the expansion and use of that into our agricultural industrial base for wheat production and gardens in the area of growing more than just small neighborhood gardens? What can we do as a council to support that?
Well, first and foremost, the small neighborhood gardens are the first step. Second off, I'd like to be able to have our city, the Parks and Rec, use our compost more than what we are doing in existence right now. Not just the compost, but the wood chips. And then right now, South Dakota State University is doing a test pilot on a piece of our land, doing it in small stages. So we're supporting them to be able to do some more research to show what compost can do for our land. So if we can each do these steps slowly, and just what you were doing with doing the partnership with the School of Mines, I mean, we've come a long way now since I've started with getting more and more people calling. I've get emails all the time of people wanting to use the compost and how to use it, being a big part of the Master Gardeners here in town. And it's just really, it's a one step at a time. You can't go full force into it. Just letting people know that it is a good product, how to use it properly, and it will get our soil maybe not be so rocky. If we get that compost and put back into it, then it'll create some more productive land.
And I would like to add, there is a potential research project being developed between several firms and the School of Mines and so forth to possibly do some research in the use of compost and water conservation and water preservation.
So we have the water, and then we have the rangeland study.
And it has some national interest, so thank you.
The motion is to acknowledge the update. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. And now we're on to item 62, which was a public hearing item, but there are no speaker requests, so we'll go read number 62 into the record. Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 62 is a second reading of ordinance number 6093, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, rezoning the within described property as requested by Renner Associates LLC for Youth and Family Services, Inc. for a rezoning from neighborhood commercial district to office commercial district for property generally described as being located at 720 North Maple Avenue. I make a motion to approve.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Item number 63, the bill list. We'll go to Pauline Sumption, the Finance Officer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was actually hoping that Mr. Hikas would stay for this so I can pull his bill reimbursement off the bill list first for lack of recognizing the Finance Office while recognizing everybody else, but he's gone. So there are no changes to the bill list then. The total is that which is attached at $8,283,423.32.
Motion and a second to approve. All in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Got a motion to adjourn and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. We are adjourned.